Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have been a bit disappointed today that my colleagues, all of whom are not millennials, have been so dismissive of the new trends that we're seeing in our workforce. I am the only millennial on this committee, and I wanted to answer one of the dismissive questions that was asked earlier today, really questioning our increased interest in flexibility. There are numerous examples of data from the following sources that demonstrate that millennials are increasingly looking for flexibility: Pew Research Center, CNBC, Ernst & Young, Fidelity, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte, and Harvard Business Review. So I just wanted to answer that question that was posed to you, Ms. Gilbert. I am very excited about the innovation that my generation brings to the workforce. We have now surpassed Generation X as the largest generation in our labor force, and 1 in 3 American workers today is a millennial, and this percentage is going to increase in the coming years. And I believe that for our country to stay competitive, we will need to be able to harness the talents, experiences, and energy of a generation that currently includes 80 million Americans. And with my new generation, as with all generation, comes new ways of doing things. Millennials are increasingly looking for flexibility and fulfillment, as Mr. Taylor and Ms. Gilbert have talked about today. We have heard how this bill increases flexibility, increases those options to our workforce, and I wanted to get your perspective, Mr. Taylor, specifically on how that's going to help employers as a recruitment tool as they're looking to recruit millennials.
It's interesting. Thank you, Congresswoman. What we're hearing is actually not only is it going to help employers, but it's going to help small employers, because the reality is large employers have the flexibility to do this already. And they are actually a competitive disadvantage. These startups, the companies they're small companies that are consistently small companies growing, but also startups. And so what we hear from them and what they are hearing from the recruits, the people that they're pursuing, is that if you can't provide me the sort of work flex, the options that the large employers can, then you can't compete for my talent. So this is now not a nice to have, it is a must have, as you pointed out, for this generation. And it's amazing to me that when we talk to people who don't exactly see this legislation as positive, they totally ignore and are in fact dismissive of the desires of this large portion of our workforce. So it will make all the difference in the world. It will help us compete for talent. Small companies will be able, it is almost an equalizer of sorts for purposes of small companies being able to compete with the big companies. So it matters.
Thank you. Ms. Gilbert, you're an employer. I'd love to hear your perspective on the shifting perspective from Generation Xers, baby boomers, to millennials, from your perspective as a business owner.
Thank you for the question. Yes, I think that there has definitely been a shift in the way that workers think about their jobs, their careers, their future. And in my generation, it was all about just working as hard and as long as it took in order to make it. And there wasn't really, in my own experience, much thought about having to work, and really family just wasn't put as much as a priority. The workplace was put more of a priority. And now I think a much better balance is happening, which is positive, that workers are saying, I do want more of this work-life balance. I do want to tend to my family needs, which is a very important development. And so employers have to flex along with this and think about what their employees' needs really are, and that can provide a more balanced approach. What I'd say with that, too, is that as we continue to have increased women in the workforce, that's especially important to have that kind of flexibility, as women still are the majority of the caretakers, both for parents and as well as children in this kind of sandwich generation, and thinking about that. But flexibility and wanting to have more options is something that I continue to see more and more, and I hear from my employees every day. And when it comes to recruiting, I would echo the same thing, that it's important as I look at recruiting great talent, and being able to offer some flexibility there is key in finding the right employees.
Great. Well, your observations to answer a question that was asked by my colleagues, it is indeed backed up by data. There were numerous sources that I listed today. So again, I want to urge my non-millennial colleagues on this committee to really think outside of the box and really reflect on these new changes that are happening generationally. It's part of the success of the gig economy. So thank you very much, and I yield back.